Welcome to Backstage with Kennedy. This little show will be your remedy. From Toronto, spanning across the sea. Cool people, lots of laughs. This is your favorite podcast.
Here's the mountain. Keep it locked on Mobius Radio.
Just a speck of dirt. Now you're bigger than the earth. I once sat upon your summit, and over that whole summer I neglected you. Now you're wondrous, terrifying. I wish that I hadn't done it, and now I will discover how to climb to new heights. This mountain of mine, I have made in my mind. It grows higher with each passing day, and I'm anxious inside every day I don't climb. Yeah, it seems like there's no way. So taking the first step today. The mountain is mine. Mind over matter, the mountain is mine. There's no trails, there are no maps. I remember now ascension. It came with changing aspects. I respected you for your sense of grand adventure. I can trust in my direction, and you'll be diplomatic and show me the way. This mountain of mine, I have made in my mind. It grows higher with each passing day, and I'm anxious inside every day I don't climb. Yeah, it seems like there's no way. So I'm taking the first step today. of the mountain is mine.
This is Mobius Radio signing off. Keep it twisted.
This is the aftermath of Alex from today's session. Look at that hand. Blister City.
Holy shit. That's what happens after 10 hours of solid fucking drumming.
Yeah, it's the price you pay to play, but...
You think, I mean, it looks worse than it is.
Dude, high five.
I can't feel a thing. It's all good.
10 hours of listening.
High five.
Hello and welcome. My name's Kennedy from the Backstage with Kennedy show. I'm here with a very special guest. He was actually supposed to be on the show way back when we were running with the old platform. And I said, you know what, Dylan, I'd rather have you come on when I have production that I'm actually happy about, and that I can actually, give you that platform that's realistic to what you deserve. So, very happy to have this guest on today. Episode 27. I've got my buddy Dylan Hennessy from Mobius Radio. How you doing, Dill?
Good, man. Happy to be back. Thank you for having me back again, and looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, brother. So, Mobius Radio. Tell the people what Mobius Radio is all about. I mean, I have a really good idea, but just for the future, for other people.
Okay, so I have to explain this in a couple different ways, I guess, because Mobius Radio is my two-piece looping-centric prog rock and EDM-inspired rock odyssey. Is the best way that I could say it. We're a live two-piece, but we never got to launch under that name because of COVID. Right as everything was coming to a head, we had a show booked for March 13th that had to get canceled on March 12th. So we never got a proper live launch. This is essentially just a transition of everything that I've been doing solo over the last several years of performing in Toronto. And we wanted to launch under a brand. And that was the name we chose. There's a bunch of fun stuff that we do in the show to tie it in and sort of like create a world around the music as well. But one day we'll be able to see that. For now, this is kind of turned into just like my passion production project and songwriting outlet for this weird music that comes together from like an amalgamation of a lot of influences that I have. And one day it will be live.
Sweet. Sweet. So that show was supposed to be. You mentioned there was a show that you had scheduled prior to COVID.
Yeah, there's
sorry. Yeah. So was that was the Bovine, right?
Yeah, we were gonna headline Bovine. It was the weekend spot. That's my home away from home venue. I go hang out there like every week, and there's like nowhere else I'd have rather done it, right? So
yeah,
breaks my heart that we never got to, and crossing my fingers that we still get to. But yeah, that was set up for that, and then we had a couple shows planned afterward. So it was funny though, like putting all the focus into the live experience of it. You could never have guessed that wouldn't become possible. Yeah. And so it really forced me over the last few months to figure out what did we want to do now that we couldn't, because we had so much invested into that element of it. And this has been like a really good period for me to sit and hone the production of some of these songs. And we have collaborations and singles and covers all like in the pipeline and in the works and live videos. And like, yeah, we've got a lot of ideas rolling right now, which is like really good. I'm super excited about where it's going to go, actually.
So you have a couple people that are collaborating in different perspectives. I mean, so obviously you're a two-piece. So you do the looping on the guitar and you do a lot of other stuff as well when it comes to looping. But you have a drummer, Alex Van Briggle. Oh shoot!
Yeah. Well,
so
there he goes.
What's Alex's situation in the band? I know he's drumming, but what's his input?
He was the drummer in a couple of my favorite rock bands in the city prior to getting to work with him. And so the opportunity came up that he had some time, and we started jamming together, and it just like it fit like a glove having drums in the back of this, which was always like, you can create a really big sonicascape with a guitar and a voice, but then there's always like kind of like that beat that felt like it was missing out of it, and he really brought that. And so his role is just like as a collaborator and someone to bounce ideas off of and sort of spitball a lot of the ideas that are going on. In the future, hopefully we can get to doing a little bit more songwriting together as well, but he definitely pitches out a lot of ideas in terms of like different things that we can do in the shows. Yeah. And he's a great fit for that. I mean, like, he's also one of the only musicians that I've really worked with who's like, whatever idea you have, I'm full force, let's do it. I'm all in on this, so he's really there to be a part of it, which makes me really excited. Yeah.
I remember seeing you play the first couple times at Bovine open mics, which is, speak of the Bovine, it's where we met years ago now. Right. It's been quite a few years now, which is wild to think.
Yeah.
But I remember Chuck Coles and I were sitting at the bar, and I think it was your first time that like we legitimately saw you at the open mic. And I remember Chuck being like, "Yo, this guy's crazy, man. He's like a scientist, man. Like he's like a scientist. The things this guy does with the guitar, very very talented." And I can see that, man. Like when he says like scientist, it's like you do things that not the average person does, and you mix and mash things in order to make this like perfect formula that people haven't seen before. And I think that really captures people's ears and eyes. It makes your sets like unbelievable to watch. Like my jaw is on the floor.
I think one of the things that I've identified is like there's two ways that you can really break through musically, I think. And one is to be the best, and one is to be the first.
Yeah.
And, ultimately you try to strive to be the best you can be at whatever craft you do. But I think realizing that it was like, let me try and just see what avenues I'm taking that might set me aside a little bit from what I see some of my peers do. And that was like a thought that occurred to me, like when I was in school for independent music production. And, ever since then, my passion in music has been varied, to say the least. I mean, I've done a prog metal record. I've done acoustic singer-songwriter showcases. I do this weird looping rock thing. I've hosted weed rooms and lounges where people are getting high, and like, and all of that became like this like big hodgepodge of influences. And one thing that kind of tied it together was like, I started looping in these live performances, and was like, I think a lot of the way that I see people do looping is very centric around like you create a chord progression and you stick to that for the song, and it kind of one trick ponies it. And I always kind of saw it as like a songwriting tool and something to be able to be like a producer that you interact with in a live setting. So that might take the place of just like only using it in certain circumstances, or, you know, not relying on it for the whole song. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I hadn't seen someone take to like a maybe more technical or eccentric approach to looping, I think. So I wanted to try doing that.
I like that. How influential was busking, Dylan? Like, you've been busking for years now. Every time you do it, you seem to have a massive crowd around you down at Yonge and Dundas Square. How big has busking been for the growth in your music and even your confidence in yourself when playing?
It's been huge. I mean, that was, again, it really brought that same idea as before to the forefront. Yeah, especially like the further you move downtown when you get to like more crowded areas. So like when I do this looping, I have a rig that I could do it mobily as well. And I got like a little powered PA with me, and I have a way to power all my pedals mobily. And so I'll bring the whole rig with me and set up at Dundas Square or at the corner of Yonge and Queen or something like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you go there with just like an acoustic guitar and you sing, hey, hey, my, like you're probably getting blown out, or you're making like $10 at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because there's so much noise. There's so much to go over top of, but it's like a high risk, high reward scenario, right?
Yep.
And so just seeing, and like, there's no better indicator as to whether or not you're doing well than someone who doesn't know who you are, right?
Yeah.
And that's all you're getting. It's just a constant stream of people. And if people are stopping and watching you, like, you know that you have something that's working. And so that was like one of the things is like, I would go out, I would play an acoustic guitar. It was okay. I'd make some money. I'd bring out the looping gear. And I was like, wow, I'm like making money doing this. Like, it's good. You know? And it's a ton of fun. And it leads to these crazy moments of having these weird interactions with strangers and just being like improvisational. And yeah, it's like a wildly unique experience.
I compare it to like, you know when you watch those like Facebook videos or those YouTube videos, and there's buskers on the side of the road, and they have just like an incredible performance. And yeah, they're like 6 people deep everywhere. And then somebody from like Outcast or Outcast comes on and like, I think it was Chaos. I think it was Chaos who did that. But I was like, that's what I feel like your situation's like, bro.
One of the songs that does best for me when I go busking is Crab Bucket. And so I play that one a lot. And like, I'm always in the back of my head, like, I really hope that he's taking a walk down the street.
Wouldn't that be wicked?
But yeah, I mean, it's so fun to do that kind of stuff though. And like, you know, you're standing up Dundas Square, like walking down Yonge Street on a Friday, can't follow them, gotta do, and you're like, hey, yes, I am on Yonge Street on a Friday.
There you go. And as a boy from Richmond Hill, right? You're from Richmond Hill originally?
Like North York, living in
okay,
North
so
Hill, yeah.
So from Thornhill. It's kind of cool that now you're doing that Yonge Street on a Friday busking and doing successful at doing that. Where you're from Thornhill, you may not have imagined that as a young age that you were going to be in that situation. So it's kind of cool how it all comes full circle for you, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
So you have a lot of influences from a lot of different stuff, a lot of prog rock, a lot of metal, a lot of alternative rock. That's what I find, at least from listening. I mean, hell, you and I went and saw a Protest the Hero concert.
We did. Yeah.
On the same night. We didn't go together, but we saw it at the same time.
Yeah. What a show, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But Billy Talent is a big influence of yours. How big have those guys been? I know you look up to Ian for sure. How big have those guys been in your growth and influence?
They were like one of the original bands that made me like, you know, want to play guitar, really. Like, I had already started playing when I discovered them, but it wasn't long after. Like, I really started picking up guitar when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and it's right around the time that I first discovered them. And, you know, I wouldn't even discover until much later that some of that probably had to do with the fact that it was like kind of happening in my area. I didn't even know that, right? Because they did blow up internationally to a point as well, right? So, but yeah, I mean, just watching someone like that had such a unique approach at the guitar, and also like he was really good at writing riffs that sounded like it might have been coming from more than one guitar player.
Yeah.
And, you know, sort of growing up with that influence and then doing stuff where I am predominantly like a solo musician, and then, you know, having that kind of an influence to bring to it was big. Yeah. I mean, they were like the original guitar influence before I even discovered like what technical guitar wankery guys are. Like, you know, when you talk about like John Petrucci or Steve Vai or that sort of stuff, like those are a lot of the revered guitar god guys, but like mine was Ian when I was like 12.
I love how like how supportive he is of like the local scene too. I mean, I got to perform alongside him. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that was the craziest thing in my life. I remember getting off stage, standing there, and Chuck takes his guitar off and gives it to Ian, and I'm like, holy
I was
hell!
there for that. Yeah,
I just played with Chuck, Dave Brownsound, and Ian DeSaw in the same set. What the hell just happened?
There have been a lot of nights like that at the Bovine, eh? Like you show up and there's like this amalgamation of like Toronto rock stars that are all just hanging out there. Like I've been there for, what was it? Like North by Northeast watching Die Mannequin play, while Cone from Sum 41 was in the room and like Ian's walking through, and I'm like, this is cool that this is like actually still where these guys hang out. And all these years later and all these tours and everything boils down to like, let's make sure that our community has a safe space for this. Let's make sure that there's like love in the space and like treat it like our home, because like that's what they did for us. And a lot of those guys from Toronto like didn't forget that, right? Which is awesome.
It's just going to help grow the scene. Like us being able to see guys like that around is just like, it's inspiring, man. Like it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
it's good.
Dill, you've been very busy creatively through this whole thing. I mean, you've become a little bit of a TikTok star.
My God.
How crazy is that, man? When you started doing the TikToks, did you expect it to blow up like it kind of has for you?
Oh man, I'll be totally honest. I feel kind of bad because like I'm definitely not posting there as much anymore.
Yeah.
Not that I've given it up entirely either, but just like nothing's coming to mind that's making me be like, oh my God, I have to be all up on TikTok right now. It's not what my content is best formatted for. Yeah. But at a point I was realizing like, oh, this is like a growing platform. And so a friend of mine convinced me to sign up and like try, and just coming up with like different ideas. Yeah, there was like that initial growth period where if you had something that captivated some eyes, it would spread like wildfire because, you know, it wasn't an oversaturated market yet. And I kind of got in at that point. So there was a couple of videos that blew up and got like a couple 100,000 views, but like they weren't even music related. It was just like dumb stuff I was posting there. And then like 95% of everything else is that, right? It's just like music. So it was kind of funny, but definitely, you know, great to have an influx of people who had never heard of me that suddenly came across me, and some of them did investigate further in for sure. So that was good.
It's a new stream of appreciation coming in. You know what I mean? And you got to appreciate that.
Sure, that's true. But like, I bet you the next one is already there, and we don't see it. And there's people over there that are gonna make a killing from it. You know, the whole key is like being able to identify where that's happening. But
so you've been obviously busy with that, like with creative stuff in general, but you got to do something that not many people have got to do recently, which is you actually got to play a live performance. I mean, it was a small, very small live performance, but it seemed very, very meaningful. And it was nice to see, man. You got to play with your dad at your grandfather's home, correct? So tell the people who don't really know about that what that was about.
Absolutely.
Because I think a lot of people want to actually be able to play live, but they just don't know how to do it properly at this point. And things have changed, obviously, right?
Right. And not that that's like what we did is like the be all end all of where live is. I mean, we played at a retirement home. But like the way that we did that. Okay. And so the story is me and my dad play as an acoustic duo, and we go by 2 shots of Hennessy. And we were playing together every week last year because we had like a residency right around the corner from where I lived. And it's like it was so nice for us to be able to get to do that and hone our craft and spend time and make some money. Awesome. we haven't gotten to play a lot since then. And obviously in light of what's been happening recently.
Yeah.
But my grandpa's never seen us play. And his days are kind of starting to wind down, you know, and he's moved into a retirement home. And so he's getting care over there. So we had the opportunity to go out and play for them. We set it up so that they actually had like a gazebo that was stationed outside of like this fence where the courtyard is then cut off.
Yeah.
And obviously the people that live there, amidst what's going on, it's like they cannot be let out of there.
Yeah.
No one's allowed in, no one's allowed out, because if one person gets it, like, we don't want to think about it. It's bad. So they've been cooped up with nothing to do and nowhere to go for months. So, you know, they were excited just to have someone come and perform. And again, it was like special to get to do that for Grandpa. And, you know, we were on this side of the gazebo and he was like right on the other side of the fence, just like sitting and watching. And we played there for a couple hours. It was a really nice thing to do. And yeah, it was great. It's like
sure
3 generations of Hennessy all right there, right? So it was awesome.
I'm sure he was very proud, man. I'm sure he was very proud. That's really cool. And I don't think a lot of people get to experience what you experienced that day.
One of the craziest things about that too is, you know, one of the things that's that he's there for is like he's starting to have a little bit of trouble with his memory, and you know, he's having trouble remembering who certain people are and trying to sort out different events. Like the timeline's kind of jumbled in his head and stuff like that, right? But something about us coming to perform there was like, my dad got a call from him like the day before, like, "Hey, you're going to be here tomorrow at 2:00, right? Looking forward to it." Like, wait a second, what? And then, you know, he was there and he was like so present and like singing along the lyrics to the songs that he knew. And then on our way back, like we called him and he was like very cognizant of the whole event, which is like one of those things. I've seen this happen with music. And I've seen this happen with people like in later years with music too, is like, it just does something to your memory and to your brain that sort of permeates on a bit of a deeper level. And I don't know, it's almost like melody connects memory tissue or something. You know, obviously it's highly scientifically inaccurate, but it's crazy how it has that power to break through that. And it was just wild to see that day. Yeah.
When I was back in college, I had a girlfriend, not to talk about exes on this episode, but she started doing this thing where she was performing at retirement homes, just you know, just for the sake of, you know, it's a lovely thing to do. Maybe I can bring a little bit of joy to people. And her and her brother would go and they would sing acoustic for the people who were staying there. And that's exactly what I found. So I wasn't really fully in on music at that point, so I was kind of just there observing. But looking around in the crowd, half the people were singing, and like the people who could dance were dancing, and you're like, they sang all songs from the 50s. So like it was songs that they like the 40s and 50s, songs that they really remembered from like their best years, I guess. And they're like all singing and dancing. I'm like, that is a beautiful thing that music can do that to someone, where, you know, it resonates in their soul. Like it does a lot more.
It gets stored on a much deeper level than a regular memory would. I'm trying to remember. I've done some study into this before as to why that happens, but it's like it provides a sensory experience to connect the memory with, which is auditory, right? Yeah. And if you link it back to that, have you ever done this where like you hear a song for the first time in like a couple months even, and it just immediately flashes you back to where you were when you last heard that song? Yeah. And like you might not have even remembered that if you hadn't heard the song. Yeah. So it's just like, it's this layering of memory that happens. I don't know. It's crazy.
You know, when you say that, there's a song that comes right to my mind right away when I think of you. Remember that night we went and saw Creep Show came in the 45s and Ray Gun Cowboys? There's a song. Yeah. There's a song by Ray Gun Cowboys. And I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but I can hear it in my head. Every time I think of you, man, I think of this song because Break the Chains is what it's called. I think of you because that was like one of our first times really, really hanging out. And you're like, let's go to the pit. And we like sat down there and stood down there and listened to this band. And we were like blown away. I didn't even know who those guys were going into that. So I was like, wow.
Dude, I found a Ray Gun Cowboy CD from like 2015 that I bought like very recently.
What? That's
I forgot.
wild.
I've seen them before. Yeah. And like it was years and years ago. Oh yeah, it was them.
I met the lead singer from that band at the Bovine after, and I was like, dude, you're so familiar. I'm like, where do I know you from? I'm like, were you on Much Music once upon a time? Like on a like a music video? And he's like, I don't know, man. I'm like, I guarantee you were, bro. Like, this is so weird. He just has one of those faces.
Yeah.
So, Jill, you for Mobius Radio, one thing I found extremely cool that not many people do. I've spoken about it in the past on episodes. How big intros are and interludes are. You have somebody who you specifically brought on who seems to be super passionate about it. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I don't know how much detail I'm going to go into right now, because for whenever we do get to play live, it's a huge aspect of it is that there's a little bit of world building, you know, and that gets done through narration. I got to work with someone that I really wanted to work with for that, and unfortunately, like, we never got to see that to fruition, just barely, right? So I mean, we'll get to do that at some point, and I'll probably find a way to use that before we get to play live again.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I really liked this idea of, like, you know, trying to find a way to house all this material together, because, you know, it's kind of created from like so many different genres. You know, in one song, we're going to do like an ambient piece, another song that might bring out an acoustic guitar. Another one is going to be like drum and bass metal, or like psy-trance with like guitars, you know, like just there's a lot of different sounds going on. And like, where might you find a lot of sounds? Like a radio. Scrolling through, you go through different channels and things like that, and it's made up of all these different sounds. And, you know, we wanted to have something to sort of like represent that, so that this could exist in this imaginary world of radio, and it does. And you guys will see that soon enough.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. Don't give too many secrets.
Not just yet. I want to be able to present it all right.
Dude, your guitar collection. I knew you had a good guitar collection. I did not know it was that good. You released
that was fun
the other day.
Yeah.
Dude, that was like really good, and your production was fantastic. Like, I was like, this man looks like he's been YouTubing for years.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done a long format video like that in a long time, especially not one that length. I've never done. But yeah, I thought it was a fun idea for a vlog, and I had that idea of like ranking them and just sort of like let the idea bubble around. And then at the point that I finally decided to get them all together and start shooting it, it was like, well, I have to see this thing through to the end. And it was like way too many hours poured into just like trying to get it all together, because the video is like 24 minutes long, right? And it's like edited the whole way through. Yeah. And I'm not like a great video editor, but I had an idea for it at least like looking okay.
Yeah.
And thankfully it came out that way. But, you know, the idea there was just like, for people who haven't seen this, I have a collection that, I guess I counted it finally, it's 20 guitars. And that's from like working at Long and McQuaid for a few years. I came upon a whole bunch of deals working there, and, you know, just previous guitars that I had for other reasons or whatever. And I thought it would be fun to go through and just try to like objectively look at like, what's the value here? Like, what's the bass stand? Where do these things all rank? And so just trying to go through that and, you know, splice it together with some demos and some stories. Cause a lot of these things, like one of the scores was sentiment, you know, and in the guitar collection, I think that's a really important aspect, is like, what has this thing been through? Like, why is it important in your collection? Definitely weighs in. So there's a lot of fun stories and like stuff that I've forgotten about that I got to talk about again. And like, it was cool. Yeah.
It was so organic and so awesome, man, that you even had a guitar die halfway through and you just like, I guess it's gone. You just threw it out of the camera. I was like, that's funny, man. Like, I loved it.
No, like I had plugged in like a month or two ago and it sounded okay. And it worked. And then nope.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was funny, man. But you definitely have a great collection, and some of those guitars are just a beautiful sound. And what you do with the guitars, I mean, for someone who hasn't heard your music, and hasn't seen you on, like, whether it's the open mic circuit, performing an actual show, busking. Basically, one thing Dylan does incredibly well, because he has such an eclectic taste of music and appreciation for music, is he's done this awesome thing where he takes different genres and collaborates them all to make beautiful mashups. I mean, your original stuff is not so much mashup-ish, but you do a lot of covers.
It is a little bit like genre mashup sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is some of that happens too.
But I saw this guy go from Jimi Hendrix to Pink Floyd to Eminem in in one song, like one, probably 6-7 minutes. And that was the first time I ever heard him. And I just remember looking around, and just generally people at the bar, they'll drink, they'll have conversations. Generally they'll look at the TVs at the Bovine. There's some sort of, whether it's old 70s pornography or like Spaceballs.
Like the best collection of random videos to play in a bar. It's so good.
There's something going on. So generally you watch the TVs and you're like, oh, that's weird. But
right, everybody
just turned from the side to the stage and just watched Dylan intently to see what the hell he was going to do next. And there's something for everybody in his music. And I think that's something that not a lot of people could do. So good on you there. Good on you there,
Thanks,
Dylan.
man. I think people also are pretty open to receiving new music if they haven't seen something that was performed that way. So, again, trying to do that looping might actually encourage someone to listen to music that was maybe a little heavier than they might have anticipated, or something that's in an odd time signature, which they might not seek out on their own. But if they were watching it in a live scenario, or there was something, some other element that was compelling about it, they might be a little bit more engaged to want to seek it out or be curious about it. So, thankfully, I mean, Bovine's a great place to elicit that reaction. The people that are in there are usually some, I say it lovingly, there's some kooky characters, and that's why I like them, man. It's just a place for weirdos to go and be awesome.
Yeah. I've always felt like we're all a little bit of degenerates, in one way or another. We're different. Whether we fit in or we didn't fit in growing up, we all seem to connect almost like a puzzle. Obviously, just like any social situation, there's people who are not going to get along perfectly. But for the most part, it's a very loving place. I walk in and all the bartenders and barbacks give me hugs.
Never seen any fights there.
7 of the regulars give me hugs. There's never fights there. You're like, man, what other places like this? You know what I mean? This is a small town feel in a big city. And with creative, beautiful people, man, it's a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing.
Special place, sure. Yeah,
brother. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up, but I do appreciate you coming on the podcast, Dylan. Thanks so much, man. Everybody, please go check out Dylan's music, and see what he's been up to and what he's gonna be up to over the next couple months, because I'm sure there's gonna be something cool coming out. Dylan, can you tell people where to find you, man?
You can find me on social media, depending on which one it is. I guess it'll be either just my name, Dylan Hennessy, or at Mobius Radio on all social media platforms. The other thing I want to mention is that right now I am doing guitar lessons and production lessons and bass lessons. So feel free to just shoot me a message if you're interested to take a free lesson. And, I can't be out performing, and I can't share the love of music that way. So I am coming back to teaching again and want to spend some time with people and just pass on some knowledge if they want to learn how to play a little bit.
Everybody, this is the guy to learn from. If you want to become a very good guitarist, this is the guy to talk to. Very, very, very great guitarist. I've never been shy to say how good I think Dylan is. And I tell everybody.
Oh, you're not.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks. You too, buddy.
You have a good one, brother. Cheers.
Take it easy.